Before we start, can I request Lata to kindly take us through a short video? Again, a very good evening to all the registered participants on Zoom, as well as to all the people who are viewing this particular webinar on Facebook. Fostering creativity in education is intended to address many concerns. As a summary, this includes dealing with ambiguous problems, coping with a changing world, and facing an uncertain future. Developing children's creativity during their years in education is the start of building human capital upon which, according to Adam Smith and successive commentators, depends the wealth of nations. Today, we have a team of absolute creative teachers led by their leader to address you on creativity in education. Let me tell you about the leader who will lead a specific team. Ms. Soraya is the head of college, Mahendra United World College, Pune, India. Soraya has worked as a professional in education for the last 21 years, both at secondary and tertiary level, and is deeply committed to this field. Her philosophy is that an educational establishment should, above all, instill a love of learning in its students and facilitate the process by encouraging and empowering teachers to explore different means through which effective learning can take place. Please take over, Ms. Soraya.
Thank you, Pradipta. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this, what I hope will be useful masterclass for all those of you who have set aside time to be with us today. It is my great pleasure to be leading a wonderful team from my school, Mahendra United World College. And first of all, I would like to say thank you to Aditya Birla Education Academy. I think more than ever, it is so important to make professional development available to teachers. It is something which we all need to grow as educators. And I really salute the initiative of the Aditya Birla Education Academy to make professional development available and accessible to all teachers. Special thanks to Pradipta and Lata, who have supported us in getting this masterclass ready. So just a little context before I begin my presentation. When I was asked by Pradipta to lead a masterclass, my instinct was, no, there's too much on. There's always too much on in a school. Always feel like we're juggling, several things, and we really don't have time to take anything additional on. And then I thought about it, and I thought, what am I constantly asking my teachers to do? And what am I constantly asking my teachers to ask their students to do? And the answer is that we are always telling each other that we need to share, we need to learn, that we need to push ourselves out of our comfort zone. Well, it was time for me to try and model some of that. because there's only so far that teaching goes. So here I am, and technology willing, we will try and actually get through a number of things today. So I will first share my screen and take you through some of the slides which I have prepared for this. So the first thing I would like to share with you so that you have some sense of what the next hour will look like is the agenda for today. I would like to spend 5 minutes just setting the context, as I've already begun. And then I want to spend about 10 minutes talking about creativity itself as a theme. After that, I have asked some of our faculty to actually showcase some of their good teaching practices. So we will start with an exercise which will be presented by one of our teachers together with our students. And then we will actually look at some language and literature teaching. And then we will look at maths. And then we will finish up with psychology. And hopefully in between, there will be a break for you to put some questions in the chat that Lata will field to the right people. And then we will spend 5 minutes wrapping up. So I hope this is not too ambitious agenda. And let's see if we can get through the next couple of slides. Okay. So just so you know where we're coming from, we are coming from Mahendra United World College, also lovingly referred to as MUCI, where we have a beautiful residential campus in Pune in the Mulshi Valley, up on top of the hill. We have all our students are residential and they're all age 16 to 19. And they spend 2 years with us doing the IB diploma program. What is interesting about our school is that we have about 75% of our students on a scholarship. And this is one of the reasons why the UWC colleges are so special, in the sense that they not only have a mission which is important and more important as we see what's happening in the world around us, and our mission is to actually use education as a uniting force to restore conflict and build a peaceful and sustainable future. But it is also the kind of movement that makes an international education accessible to students on a need basis. So one of the things which we try to do in our teaching is we put a heavy emphasis on experiential learning, and our teachers are people who are themselves attracted to the movement because they think a little bit differently and they want to have a hands-on approach to how we teach. And they also choose to live with our students on the campus so that we can actually have 3 different kinds of programs running through what we teach: the academic program, the residential program, and also the kind of what we call the Triveni program, which is the CAS program, but with a lot of additional components. So that's just to give you a sense of where we're coming from. But today's presentation is not specific to the IB. And it is very broad-based in the sense that we are covering subject areas which I think will be relevant to teachers wherever it is that you teach and whoever it is that you teach. Because what we are going to try and do is share ideas with you that you can actually develop. So why creativity? So we chose creativity as a theme for our school this year. And the reason that we did this is that it is a theme which actually causes us to reimagine how we want to do things. So one of the things which has happened over the last few months is that COVID has presented us with a lot of challenges. But when we look at what is present in the news, we see that a lot of teachers are actually using their love of teaching to come up with incredible ways of teaching. And what I have seen certainly in the media, and I'm sure you have also come across it, I have seen a teacher using a phone and a transparent shelf from their fridge to actually write underneath while they have a camera on their phone on the transparent shelf and actually showing their students what they're writing. I have seen teachers come up with incredible ways of tying up their phones so that they can actually be seen writing on the board. And I think that this is one of the things which, for me, has made me realize how important it is for us to be creative in the way that we teach. And perhaps, you know, using the fact that our hands are a little bit tied at the moment because we don't have our students physically in front of us, will actually allow us to re-examine the role of creativity within the education system. Many of you will be familiar with Sir Ken Robinson, who unfortunately we lost in August of this year. And you will know that, you know, he has a whole number of YouTube videos. One very famous one is Do Schools Kill Creativity? And one of the things that he says in that video is that we don't grow into creativity, we grow out of it. And it's something which is very sad, because it means that we actually inherit students who come to us with a lot of innate creativity, different ways of thinking, ways of playing. And really the kind of curricula that we use or the kinds of systems that we put in place to teach these students slowly kills that creativity. What does that mean for us as teachers? And we turn around, as many of us do, and say, oh, you know, we are not regulated by what we want to do. We are regulated by what higher education institutions demand of us. And we need to get the students or score higher grades. But we have to also stop at some point and ask ourselves, at what cost is this happening? Increasingly, young people are suffering from mental health issues. Increasingly, teacher morale is suffering as a result of this. So we really need to kind of pause and think, you know, what are we doing that's right? And are we just putting one foot in front of the other because that's what we've been used to doing? Or is this a chance for us to kind of re-examine what we should do and how we should do it? So one of the things which, had I had time to actually do with you today, is I would have asked you to rename yourselves. And I'm finding it a little bit strange, I can't see all of you. To actually rename yourselves, but maybe you can have a think about this. If you were to find a synonym for creativity, what would be the word that you would put there? And if you were to look for an opposite or an antonym to creativity, what would be the word that you put there? And you will find that the words that you put next to creativity as a synonym of that word are all the attributes and the skills that we want our students to actually develop. And the antonyms, of course, are the skills and, well, not skills, they're attributes that we would much rather our students didn't fear, right? Didn't feel, like fear, like passivity. So please do, you know, you can do this exercise maybe yourselves, but it's an important exercise to do. One of the things which I think is important in terms of, you know, how a school can create a culture of creativity within its space is to actually have safe to fail spaces. What do I mean by safe to fail spaces? I mean that teachers cannot be empowered to teach students to think creatively or to come up with creative ideas. The teachers themselves are not given that space to actually be creative in the way they teach, right? So one of the things which struck me when I was looking through some, you know, quotes on creativity is something which Simon Sinek said, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with him. But he said the role of a leader is not to come up with all the great ideas. The role of a leader is to create an environment in which great ideas can happen. And when I talk about leader here, I'm not talking about only somebody who leads a school, but in many ways, what is the role of a teacher now? A teacher is no longer someone who delivers content. A teacher is a facilitator. A teacher is a guide. A teacher is a leader in the classroom. So if you want your students to actually generate creative ideas, you need to create the kind of environment that allows for that to happen. And those of us who are school leaders need to create the kind of school which allows teachers to be able to do that. One of the other quotes that I came across, which I thought was very interesting for today, is that you don't hire for skills, you hire for attitude. You can always teach skills. So what does that mean? It means that sometimes when we are recruiting teachers, we tend to take teachers who have many years of experience, you know, delivering a particular program and having high grades of achievement in the students that they teach. But a lot of people who are passionate about teaching are not necessarily the kinds of people who have had a lot of years of experience. That might be a bad thing. It actually means that they are more willing to take some risks in the classroom and teach things differently. It also means that within our students, we want to cultivate an attitude of bravery, an attitude of risk-taking, where they are actually not always told, oh, you know, shade between the lines, because maybe it's not by shading between the lines that they're actually going to come up with something truly amazing. So the next thing that I wanted to quickly say is that, and you can have the references to what I'm talking about here, but we have different kind of creativity. People very often shy away from creativity because they think, I'm not artistic, you know, who's creative? People who only produce works of genius are creative. That's the big C creative, right? There's the big C creative, there's the little c creative, and then there is even the mini C creative, which I thought was very interesting. And if you will quickly read what's on these slides here, you will see that what we want for our students is that they have a meaningful experience, that they are able to actually have that creativity within them nurtured so that they can be flexible and intelligent in the way that they think. As Vygotsky said, quote, any human act that gives rise to something new is referred to as a creative act, regardless of whether what is constructed is a physical object or some mental or emotional construct that lives within the person who created it and is known only to him. So we have had theorists who have talked about creativity, but somehow in the race for higher grades, it's kind of disappeared from the way that we teach in our classrooms. Now, what I would like for you to do is to think about in your classroom, how important it has become for students to actually begin to think differently, to become entrepreneurs in the way they view the world. We need young people to imagine the way that we do things, because the world in which they are functioning and will continue to live in is constantly throwing up new challenges. And nothing drives this home more than what has happened over the last few months. All too often, teaching becomes about the teacher. It becomes about the teacher's comfort zone. It becomes about what risks they are willing to take or whether they are willing to make themselves vulnerable in the classroom. And it should be about what the students' needs are, not about what the limitations of the teacher are. And if the teacher sees themselves as a learner, then there are no limitations for the teacher. If we look at 21st century needs, we can see that students use creativity to rethink situations from new perspectives, to see approaches that are not apparent at first, and to respond to situations with elegance, utility, and novelty. And that's taken from the UNESCO publication, which is interesting. When you look up, actually, you know, creativity, there is a lot of kind of debate around this. Is this something that can be taught? Is this something that is content driven? Are schools doing this the right way? It's not really complicated. I think many of us choose the teaching profession because we like young people and we want to share what we know with them, and we want to help them become better than we were and to become best versions of themselves. But somewhere along the line, we've lost the ability to imagine, to play, to find joy in learning. And that is something which does not have to be pitted against achievement in learning. Problem solving and critical thinking are direct byproducts of being creative in the way one thinks and acts in the world. Interdisciplinary approach to teaching and learning is key to students being able to join the dots as they learn and actually arrive at meaningful experiences. And the last thing I want to say before I now pass over to my colleagues' presentations is that the key to creativity is collaboration. So with that, what I would like to share with you is the short series of presentations which we have put together, my team and me, for today. We will start with experiential learning across the humanities, which is facilitated by Manish Thapar, who is the head of creativity and activity at MUCI, and he is also faculty in economics. And we have joining us today one of our second-year students at MUCI, Leela Adepali, And the two of them, well, actually Leela will be leading on the presentation. Manish will be prefacing it. This will be immediately followed by 3 short videos of teaching across literature and language by 3 of my colleagues. Ainoa Orensans, who is the head of academics and also a teacher of Spanish, Catherine Lee, faculty in English, and Paola Gonzalez Lille, who is head of Group 2, which is language acquisition, and the teacher of Spanish. And after that, we will have a 5-minute break. So while the presentations are going on, please can you put the questions in the chat so that Lata can actually then collate them and we can have questions immediately after these presentations have taken place. Thank you for your patience. Leela and Manish, over to you.
Thank you, Soraya. Am I audible? Yeah. Thank you, Soraya, and thank you, Pradipta and his team for organizing this such an amazing event for all of us, where we can share creative ideas. So, as Soraya mentioned, my name is Manish Thapar, and I teach economics, which comes under under Group 3 in IB, and I also take care of outdoor education at MUKI. So, talking about creativity over here, I personally feel that every year it's a big task for all the teachers to think how we can be creative enough to introduce Group 3 subjects. In the past, you know, we did sessions on race and genders, we did session on Brexit, and we tried to connect all Group 3 subjects in these activities. But last year we thought, let's make it more of a hands-on activity. So we came up with an idea which involves money, some shopping, a small trip to local village, which is close to our campus. And of course, it involves a lot of learning and fun. And we call it powered orientation with Power Walk. As Soraya mentioned, you know, at MUKI, every year a new batch of 120 students join from roughly 60 different countries. And in such diverse community, each student has a different entry point of learning. So it's never an easy job to set an activity which can have an equal or meaningful impact on the learners. As David Kolb's experiential learning cycle model suggests, that students' entry point of learning could be thinking, watching, feeling, or doing. And through the reflections process can, through the reflection process, can the experience be truly transformational. So connecting it to our college annual theme, which is creativity for this year, our current second year students have decided to replicate the whole experience of Power Walk into an online model, because they thought that this learning activity has bigger interdisciplinary connection. And it fit well, you know, in Kolb's learning cycle. So they came up with this innovative idea of virtual shopping experience. As creativity is not just about the tendency to generate or recognize ideas, alternatives, or possibilities that may be useful in solving problems, it's also about being a creative person who can present old objects in new forms instead of inventing any new object. That's what our team did when COVID-19 has drastically changed education and put a focus on e-learning. Of course, our students were apprehensive initially and were worried, what if we get wrong? And it can impact the learner in a detrimental way. But of course, as Soraya mentioned, that, you know, at MUKI we do emphasize on a safe space to fail. So obviously our answer was that we are in this together and it's a safe space to fail for all of us. So without any further delay, I'll hand over this virtual mic to Leela, our second year student, who will take you, all to this creative model of Power Walk. And thank you. Over to Leela.
Hi, thank you for that introduction, Manish. I'm just going to be sharing my screen right now. Let me know if you can see it. Yeah, can you see my screen? Great. So, hey everyone, my name is Leela. I'm a senior at the United World College of India, and I live in Mumbai. Last week, we had orientation for the first years, and I helped out with Group 3. As you might know, Group 3 in the IB is divided into subjects related to the humanities, including philosophy, history, economics, global politics, and psychology. For our Group 3 orientation last year, we were shown around a small town near our campus. The 120 kids in our batch were divided into multiple groups of varying sizes with different amounts of money. We were told to look around, shop, eat, and return in a couple of hours. Only after we reached back to campus, were we told that the reasoning behind the division of the groups in such a unique way was that each group came from a different section of society. For instance, my group or my family was upper caste, had a high income, had white collar jobs, and only 3 members in the family. On the other hand, my roommate had only 50 rupees to divide between 10 of them. I traveled in an air-conditioned car, and she traveled in a bus with 40 other people. So you get the picture, right? None of us were equal. Once we were told our family scenario, we were led through a power walk to physically represent the differences between the various families. A power walk is what we call us realizing how much of a head start we have on life as compared to other people by taking steps forwards and backwards based on our family scenario. As you can see in this image, all of us was lined up at a single starting point, but very soon we spread disadvantaged families either stayed where they started or went way, way behind. Reflecting on this was an integral part of our orientation, and we didn't want our juniors to miss out on it. We were not happy with the alternate plans, and so we focused on translating this experience to the virtual platform. While our juniors would be unable to look around the town eating charred corn and goofing around like we did, we felt that they should at least be able to reflect on this inequitable society that we live in. This was the thinking that led us to build our online shopping experience. Just like last year, we created multiple groups with varying family scenarios. Once again, each group was given different amounts of money, starting from 1,000 rupees and ending at 5 lakh rupees. We built a website to simulate the shopping experience from last year. The site contains sections including beauty and fitness, movies and music, where you could find Netflix and Spotify subscriptions, fashion, where you could find clothes from all over the world, electronics, fruits and vegetables, where they had to buy supplies for the whole week. As you can see, as the students wouldn't be able to experience this in the Indian context, we chose to give them global products to buy. We also created a Google form, which functioned in the same way as a shopping cart, where we could answer questions like how much of their income they spent on luxuries and how much they spent on necessities. We also simulated the power walk that I told you about on Google Sheets. This is where the subjects came in. Students were asked questions like, if your family was able to afford meals for a whole week, take one step forward. And if your family could not buy any electronics, take one step backward. And we then had a discussion on what it means to be privileged and how this very real life scenario relates to the different subject matters. For instance, they were asked to think if their family would have mental health care, considering their background and resources, which is a question from psychology. They were asked to take a step forward if they had freedom of speech, which relates to global politics. They were asked if they could evolve as a person if their identity restricts their opportunities, which again is from philosophy, and so on. Last year when I did this orientation program, I was initially awed at my ignorance and realizing that I was not middle class as I thought I was, but felt in the top 1% of our population by virtue of simply being able to eat and feel safe in my own home. On speaking with our juniors, I was glad to know that they too left with similar realizations and were very excited to begin Group 3 academics at UP. So while we couldn't completely recreate the pod orientation, we managed to adapt it to the virtual platform and create something equally meaningful and creative. And that's about it. Thanks a lot, Soraya and Manish, for letting me speak, as well as the Aditya Birla Academy for letting me be here today.
Thank you so much, Leela. Thank you. So I would like to actually just move straight into the next video, which is actually some literature and language ideas. So if you have questions based on what Leela has presented, do please put them in the chat, and Lata will field them to Leela. And if Manish is still around and not gone back to his teaching, maybe he will also help her to answer those questions. But let's move on now to a presentation by Ainoa Orinsans, who is the head of academics at MUCI, about how to teach a novel.
Hello everyone. I would like to share with you today an activity that I did with my literature class a few months ago, which is focused on how to analyze characters in any literary work using social media. For this specific activity, I used the handmade tale because that was the book that we were studying at that time, but obviously this activity can be transferred to any other literary work that you might be using in your classes. Before I explain the activity such as, I would like to give you some background about how this activity came to life. First of all, I realized that the demographic and interests of my students were changing from year to year, and hence there was a need for me to modify my way of teaching. One of the questions that the students ask me very often is how literature is relevant for these days. What is the use of literature? And hence, for me, it's very important to make constant relations between the literature that we study in class and the outside world. This is that students are used to interact with very different kind of texts than the ones that we were used before. They are not engaging in long readings anymore, but rather they are exposed to multiple short texts daily. For instance, they check Facebook, they interact on Twitter, they have Instagram and Snapchat, and this is becoming a challenge when it comes to analyze and engage with very long text, as the one that we are using today for this activity. Lastly, and not least important, students struggle with understanding the old traditional way of analyzing characters. What do you mean by a flat character? What is a dimensional character, or what is the difference between statics and dynamics? Hence, as I said before, for me it's key to make these constant connections with real life. And I come up with this analogy, which is not very good one, that analyzing a character is like getting to know your best friend, or sometimes your worst enemy. And then that kept me thinking, how is that the students nowadays make friendships? What is the way of interaction that they have? And I thought, obviously, in social media. Our students spend a huge amount of time daily interacting with others using Facebook or using Twitter or Snapchat or other social medias. And hence, I thought that it was a great idea to use those to analyze the characters of the novel that we were studying. The idea is very simple. You will give the students the chance to choose one of the characters of the novel or work that you are studying in class and elaborate a Facebook profile. This profile should keep active during the time that you are studying the novel, and it should get updated every day after you finish to analyze a chapter. Obviously, it is also very important that these profiles are not just working in isolation, but that the students get the chance to interact with other characters / students of the class. Before they even start thinking on how they are going to come up with the profile, I gave them these 5 areas to think of and to focus on. Motivation. What is that motivates your character actions? Are these actions ethical or unethical? How the actions that your character made during the novel play an impact or have an impact, in other characters. Is that going to affect your status? Are you going to change your status to single or to married, or my relation is complicated according to the actions that the character is taking in the novel? Worse, this section is more focused on the use of language of the character. The students should replicate the same style and tone and use the same kind of vocabulary in their post that the character has in the novel. I also gave them the chance to focus on descriptions. How is your character described by others? How is the character described by themselves? This area will help them to upload pictures and even to talk about certain events that the character might go through on the novel. And also names. What does the name of your character mean? How is that impacting their character? So these are some of the areas that I asked them and I shared with them before they start creating the profile on Facebook. To be honest, it was an activity that the students enjoyed. We were constantly checking and updating the profiles on Facebook as we were studying the novel, and I have to admit that the result was kind of surprising even to me. So I hope that this is of use for you, and please do not hesitate to ask me any further questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ainoa, for that, even though it wasn't live. And for those of you who were watching the video, we thought we would try to pack as much as possible, which is why we had the recordings done before. But do please note your questions, and we will try and field them afterwards. I don't know how we're doing for time. I'm going to try and pretend that we are still within time. So can we move on to the next presentation now, which is by Catherine Lee, our English teacher and also water parent at MUCI.
Before coming to MUCI, I was lucky to work on a project that encouraged students and teachers to engage with poetry and to rediscover the value of hearing and speaking poetry out loud and learning by heart. It made us look at how we were teaching poetry in the classroom, and we wanted to make it much richer and more personal experience than the traditional analysis of poems on paper. The poets that we met while working on the project made a clear distinction between poetry spoken aloud and were rather disparaging of what they called page poetry. Here are a few of the things we tried to make poetry teaching more personal and engaging for students. The first thing is that poetry is primarily an oral and aural medium. There are plenty of places that do still value the learning and reciting of poetry in schools, but it's often more of an exercise in drilling or competing. In the classroom, it can be used in a way that allows exploration of meaning and encourages students to meet the poem without anyone imposing their reading on it. I've used this as a group exercise. Cutting up a longish poem, they work in groups, each member learning a section, and then putting on a group reading. It's always interesting to talk about how varied these are, and I'm always surprised at how keen they are to commit poems to memory and how long they stay with them. Once we sit down to study poems, no matter how creative the introduction has been, it's easy for students and teachers to default to a feature-spotting autopsy of the poem and lose any sight of the whole. Glyn Maxwell, a British poet whose book on poetry I can't recommend highly enough, offers a different approach to discussing poems. He suggests looking for the sunlit side, the narrative, the events, what it's about, then the lunar side, which is offered up more slowly, giving us the underlying messages, deeper thoughts. The musicality is key and only really evident if the poem is spoken, preferably by heart, so that you can experiment without having to read it too. The layout is evident on the page, but the real interest here is how the page layout influences the recitation of the poem. Suddenly line breaks, stanza breaks, and the like take on new meaning. This offers a much richer way of understanding the construction of a poem and leaves it intact at the end of the process. Learning poems by heart does have its limits if you have to introduce 15 poems in 6 weeks to get through an IBDP unit. But thinking about the learner portfolio, there are some interesting tasks to be done transforming the genre that reveal new readings of the poems. Poems becoming short films, graphic novels, plays or collages will all offer a new viewpoint. Even simple classroom activities we associate with younger students bear revisiting. Making a poster and writing the poem out are familiar activities for young learners, but here you can see that the decision-making involved can involve assessing the poem's meaning, values, and its verbal texture and shape. Lastly, the source and the inspiration for much of this is this book, which anyone who is even remotely interested in poetry should read. In the book, he talks of the precise moment at which the pressure of a silence breaks into an utterance that has to be heard, as the poet finally puts pen to paper. Who wouldn't want to write the story of that moment?
Thank you so much for that, Kath. While we're waiting for the next presentation to come up, some of these ideas that we're sharing with you, they're just ideas that you can pick up on and also shape for your particular audience. There was a question about primary school students, for example, about a character whom you turn into your best friend, or even, the drawing of something that is literary so that you capture it in a visual manner. Or, students, I have the greatest respect for primary school teachers because I think they're actually very creative. And I think that a lot of the ideas also can come from the students themselves. So the next presentation is by Paula Gonzalez, who is the head of language acquisition at MUKI. And I will let her presentation do the talking for her amazing work.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Paola González Leal, and I teach Spanish ab inicio, Spanish B, and Spanish Lead at Mahendra United World College of India. Today, I'm here to talk about how I integrate creativity into my Spanish ab inicio blogs. Due to the COVID-19 situation, we were forced to move to an online period, and our school requested us to do 2 synchronous lessons and 1 asynchronous work. During this asynchronous work, students were expected to do some theoretical work that we will do in class otherwise. To make it fun and interactive and creative, over the summer I was thinking that I could create a virtual classroom where students could find me, I could give them the objectives, instructions, and they could proceed to do their work. So I'm going to project here my virtual classroom. So here you can see my students were working on it. This is the main slide. It's generally the same one. I have some posters, I have some plans, or I have books, and it says asynchronous work for Spanish ab inicio. And you can also see a bit more of myself, just to make it more personal and more engaging for a student, right? On the second slide, I project the objectives for today's class and how are we going to proceed. So if you click on the next slide, you will see that the first step will be clicking on the books, and it will take them to a PowerPoint with a conjugation. The next one will be clicking on the radio. It will take them to a video with subtitles that is in YouTube. And the third one is a notebook with a pencil. If they click on it, it will take them to the grammar book that we are using in class to complete some exercises. So I'm going to show you an example here. If I click on the books, it will take you to the Google Drive where I have the PowerPoint. And if I click on the radio, it will take you to the YouTube video that they have to watch with subtitles. And if we click on the notebook, it will take them to Manage Back, where we have all the content and all the textbooks. So in this case, this is the textbook. The next slide, sorry, it's just a reminder that if they have questions, they can come to class and ask me, or they can visit me in my office hours. I'm planning to continue using this tool for songs, for movies that they can watch, or just to play games, for example, in Spanish. So it won't be only about grammar, it will be about any other thing. Slowly, I will be creating a virtual classroom that they could identify. And for this virtual classroom, I use a PowerPoint, just using some background images, and then I incorporate a bit more to make it more personal. Thank you so much, and have a good day.
Thank you for that, Paula. Okay, so I think because you have had one after the other, a whole series of videos, maybe we will just break for now and have a couple of questions, which Lata can field to the right people.
Yeah, I think Ainoa has been very kind to answer the questions that were for her in the chat box. So we're through with those ones. We have a few general questions which you can direct to whoever you may feel can answer them better. One is how can you bring innovation and creativity for teaching in the primary classes? We have a teacher from a primary class who's asking.
Yeah, I think I kind of tried to give a response to that, because I realized that it's a very different ball game. I've always felt that primary school teachers do a much better job, actually, of bringing creativity into the classroom than secondary school teachers. And one of the reasons I feel this is that I think the pressure of exams is not there in the primary the way that it is in the secondary. But I think that I would say short answer is just let them play and listen to what they're doing and develop ideas there, right? One of the things which I tried to do when I was, when I started thinking about this webinar was that as a learner, what are the things that I would like to have on the menu? So it's about knowing your audience. What is it that kids like to do? They like to use their hands. They're more tactile. So if you're teaching them a text or you're trying to teach them language or words, I think getting them to actually use physical things like plasticine or modeling clay, or actually drawing things out, calling each other out, turning things into a game. I think gamification of learning is really important. I also think that teaching or allowing young kids the same kinds of things that I was mentioning earlier, a safe to fail space. There's no right or wrong. It's just about expressing what you have understood and doing it in the way that you would like to, maybe using a different array of materials that you can go to, those that want paint, use paint, those that want plasticine, use that, those that want chalk and I mean, I think just giving them different ways of expressing what they have learned, I think can go some way towards this. I'm not an expert in primary, so I don't know, Aparna, whether you have some insights.
Well, I do think that you captured most of it, especially when we talk about younger learners, we're all talking about exploring multiple ways of learning, right? And the whole idea of multiple intelligences is really key in that age group, and actually catering to movement, audio-visual aids, tactile aids is key in helping students understand what is their preferred mode of learning as well. And even though I'm not a big proponent of learning styles, I do feel like exploring multiple forms of learning is really important at a younger age, so that students can work with multiple forms of acquiring knowledge and acquiring skills. But you pretty much covered most of it, so that's good.
Thank you, Aparna. Lata, any more questions?
Yes, we have another question. Thank you, Aparna, for answering that one. So how much guidance do students need to implement creativity in the classroom?
Anyone want to pick that one up? I'm just opening it up to my team. How much guidance do you think students need?
Can I take a shot at it? I've often noticed that students are way more creative than the adults. And I often take my cue from students. They have great ideas. They know want to learn and what they want to learn. And I think allowing them the opportunity to share some of these things can be a great way to model your classroom and prepare your classroom so that you're actually fulfilling the needs that your learners have. So I think your guidance actually comes from students with regards to how you design your classes. I don't know if anyone else would also like to share their thoughts.
I might just throw something in there, which is also, I think it's really important that students see their teachers as learners. I think that when they see us struggle, try, improve, fail, I think it gets them moving, right? Because creativity is it's not a perfect thing. I think it's something which we get as we actually try things out. So I think trying and being seen to try as a teacher is key to actually modeling that so that students can also do that.
All right, I think we can proceed now and we'll take a few more questions at the end.
Thank you, Lata. So we will now move into two very short presentations. One which is around learning maths in a very active way and a fun way by Chiara Kayamian, who is a maths teacher at MUCI.
Hi everyone, I'm Chiara Kayamian. I come from Italy and I am a faculty of mathematics at Mahendra United College of India. I'm here today to share with you some ideas on how to make our teaching more creative. One of the important parts of our job is the revision of topics with students before an exam or a test. It is a crucial moment in the students' learning process. We know that as teachers, and they are aware of that as students. Last year, I planned to organize several activities about revision of topics with my students that they loved a lot. The idea is very easy. Let's play with mathematics. Let's divide our students in small groups of 4 or 5 people each and ask them to decide a group name and to create a personal group motto. This makes the students feel they are part of a real team. After that, let's start a healthy competition among the groups, proposing different games. For example, the game memory. Let's show to the students for 1 or 2 minutes a sheet full of different mathematical formulae they have studied. After this time of memorization, let's ask to each group to reproduce the same sheet with the all right formula they can remember. Of course, the group with the most high number of right formula is the winner of the match.
Beautiful students.
Different game is dominoes. Students have to connect 2 sides of 2 different domino pieces, finding any mathematical correlation between them. For example, a triangle and the formula of its area, or something more complicated related to our IB syllabus. Anyway, another game is charades. Students have to mime some mathematical and often abstract concept, making them extremely real and touchable.
Log A plus log B is equal to...
There is no point that the more appreciated game for students are the sporting games. Students enjoy to run away, to go on the right side of the field and after go back on the left part of the field without any valid reason. And in the sporting games, they feel they can also use some not intellectual skills in order to win a point. So this is my idea. Let's put on the field 1 subject book for each group. And after, let's start a race among the groups. Let's shout with a lot of enthusiasm the page and the exercise number that students have to solve. And after, let them free to reach out the book, solve the exercise, and come back to you with the solution. If it is the right solution, is even better.
Exercise page 134. Exercise number 10. Letter A, go!
In all these games, students work in a team, practice a lot, fix contents, and revise for the exam. All that with fun and joy. And this is exactly what teachers wish for their classes. So I will stop here. Thank you so much and see you across the world. Ciao.
Thank you so much, Chiara. I think all of us actually feel like doing some maths now. But you can see that this was not an attempt on our part just to show you how beautiful our campus is. But we do have a huge advantage because we have wonderful grounds and we do use the spaces. And I think that's also a really important point, that please think about using spaces creatively and not sort of, having the same old kind of desk and chair and kind of the same setup in the classroom, because the physical space can have a huge impact on how students learn. The last video that we have to share with you today is one which is on the brain. So walking through the brain, by Aparna Ramchandran, who's also the head of student life at MUCI and a psychology teacher.
Hi, my name is Aparna, and I'm a teacher of IB Psychology. Today, I want to share an activity I do with my students to get through the heavy topic of studying the brain and its various parts. This activity was originally proposed by John Crane on In Thinking, and over the years, I've adapted it to suit the needs of my students. The IB Psychology curriculum does not require students to know parts of the brain. However, most psychology teachers agree that it is important for them to get a sense of the key areas of the brain and their functions. Hence, this creative activity is just perfect for that. This activity is done in groups and is designed to have students do some research and then share their information with their peers. The goal is to design a presentation that would be both visual and interactive. To make things interesting, I divide students into 3 groups based on the 3 main sections of the brain. And this careful division into 3 groups is also an opportunity for students to learn about the evolution of the brain. The first group presents the reptilian brain that includes the midbrain, pons, medulla, cerebellum, thalamus. These are just some pictures of the models my students have made over the years. Another picture. The second group presents the mammalian brain that focuses on the limbic system. So the amygdala, hippocampus, hypothalamus, also often called as the limbic brain. This group presented a cross-section of the brain. They made this model with cake. And they made incisions on it to show us the different internal areas of the limbic brain. It's quite a fun way to learn about this. And finally, the cerebral cortex that explores the 4 lobes, as well as the prefrontal cortex. As you can see, this is a highly visual model depicting the various functions of the lobe. I still have that model in my office. So I asked students to include some of the following information in their presentations as well. A simple description of the location of this area within the brain, a general overview of the functions of this part, a few research studies involved with this part of the brain. Like you know, it's psychology is based on scientific research, and it's an important part of studying the subject. And finally, I also asked them to include what happens when this part of the brain is damaged or dysfunctional. I typically give students a week to work on their material. So once students are ready, we set up our classroom, our tables and chairs in a way that makes it a walk-through maze or a museum, where students have to first learn about the lower parts of the brain before they move on to the limbic system and finally to the neocortex or the higher brain. Students also organize Kahoot quizzes and other forms of assessment that their peers have to complete before they can move on to the next level. So it's a bit of a gamification while you're studying something that's so heavy. So it's like an experience of the evolution of the brain from lower parts to higher parts while learning the functionality of each area and checking your learning of the material as well. Over the years, I've noticed that this is a fun and very creative way to engage students in learning a topic that can otherwise be quite heavy and cumbersome to study. So I would encourage you to give it a try. Thank you.
Okay, this pretty much takes us to the end of the presentation. So I'm just going to quickly go to my last slide, which is basically about, which is basically wrapping up everything that's been shared with us. So as you can see, I work with some pretty amazing educators, and we learn from each other all the time, which I think is part of the reason why we all chose to get into education in the first place. So just some thoughts for us to hold on to. Really important for us to re-examine the learning outcomes, the why of learning as opposed to the what. Too much emphasis is placed on, what we prepare for our classes, instead of which we should really be looking at why are we teaching this and how can we actually achieve these learning outcomes in a way which speaks to our students as learners. The second thing is trying to make it fun, teaching through play, speaking the language of our students, understanding our audience a little bit better. sharing what we learn and modeling learning in our teaching, which is what I said earlier. If our students believe that we are also learners and we're learning with them, they bring something to the table and they're more willing to accept what we bring to the table. And lastly, using an interdisciplinary approach to teaching and learning is what is more natural for our students, for the young people that we teach. Maths cannot exist in a silo. It has to actually link up with, the statistics we use in economics, or the physical way in which our bodies move. So trying to actually create connections between subjects and collaborating as teachers and learners, I think is key to this. I hope you have enjoyed today's session. And I would just like to, on behalf of all of us at Mahendra United World College, thank all of you for the time that you've given to today's presentation. So thank you to all the participants and also to the organizers at the Aditya Birla Education Academy.
Thank you so much. Can we take a couple of more questions? We have another question. What challenges do teachers face while implementing creativity in the classroom?
Anyone? What challenges do you guys face while implementing creativity in the classroom? I think anyone who shared something today, happy for you to share some of the issues that have come up when you've tried to use creativity, or maybe share that there haven't been any issues, I don't know. Paula or Kath, maybe, Kiara?
Can I say something? I think one of the things is letting go of having complete control and being prepared to think on your feet a little. I think it's much harder to allow creativity in if you've got a very rigid idea of exactly how every lesson's going to go, and being willing to go in and have something unexpected happen, the safe place to fail and all that. But it doesn't necessarily mean a fail. It can just be that something you weren't expecting comes along, and that is sometimes where the real magic is.
I think that for me, the most interesting challenging that I meet when I propose to my students to create something new in class is the fact that I know very well where and when we start, right? We know very well our start point, but we cannot know our final point, or the middle point in the way, because the students are so creative, so you really cannot predict which will be the sea that you will navigate. So I think that it's so interesting. It's something like imprevedibility.
Thank you to both of you. And I think in the chat also people are saying that time can be a constraint, right? We have X amount of time within which to deliver content. And that can sometimes really hamper how creative our ideas are. And that's, I think, something we all kind of try to figure out. It's funny how very often as teachers, we do the real teaching when we're not actually focusing on what the syllabus is asking us to do. So it's one of those things.
That brings me to my next question. How do we ensure that academic learning, preparing for an examination, how that happens along with all of these activities that we do to inculcate creativity? How do we ensure that actual academic learning also takes place?
So unless I have a taker for this, I have an attempt. Okay, so actually, Lata and whoever it is asked this question, if you start reading the research about creativity and doing things in a different way, you find that the two are not at polar ends. They're not at different ends of the spectrum. Creativity aids learning, and the student's capacity to take in what you're delivering actually increases when what you're teaching is fun, engaging, and actually leads to an outcome. And I think that very often what we do is, I had this conversation, I said this to my students recently, our students recently, I said, we underestimate young people very often. And we don't think that they, need to be told what we are trying to do. Very often when you share with young people what you're trying to do, they actually give you ideas, right? So if you start any lesson with what outcome of that lesson is supposed to be, and then you engage in a creative activity to arrive there, very often you will find that you get there much faster. Students actually take a lot of time because they are bored very often in the way in which they are being made to regurgitate something or learn something by heart, right? And I'm not trying to, say that there aren't some subjects where there is a learning by heart component. But I think that if, again, the logic of it can be explained to students and you can get them on board, I think they actually are more willing to cooperate. So I don't think the two things have to be pitted against each other is my short answer to that question.
And I think we have enough proof here. We have Leela, who's just said that as a student, she can attest that she remembers the fun and creative classes more than the academic ones. So I think we have enough proof in place that way. All right, I'd like to invite Dr. Anuradha from the Aditya Birla Education Academy to take this forward.
Yes, I was on mute. Thank you for the wonderful, wonderful session. I think the whole aspect of modeling and the interdisciplinary teaching, actually, you model the whole practice, Soraya, and the entire team, I must say. And when you got about the interdisciplinary book, I think you walk the talk is what I would say in short, in terms of bringing in. And rather than just talking about it, and you demonstrated the entire team. So I have just to say a very big thank you to you, Leela, Kaira, Parna, Kaira, all of you who actually, Manoj, Manish, who actually took it, each and every subject area. And when we talk about creativity, it's often a misconception that creative classes can happen in the younger classes. And you kind of completely proved that myth wrong by putting these examples through the higher classes, I must say, with the grade level 12 teaching and through academic subjects, each and everything so depth in their learning. And if you can combine this rightly, as you said over the last question, if you can combine that with the academic rigor and bring in creativity, I'm sure students like Leela will remember this for life, I guess. So thank you so much for this wonderful evening of learning for all of us here who've joined this session. Thank you again.
I was just going to say on behalf of all of us, thank you.
Yes, I must add this, otherwise Lata's, she's going to give me a boom boom, that on the 17th, we're going to start up a teacher meetup activity. This is again one of our initiatives for bringing in collaboration and building in professional learning communities within India and across. And Lata will send details, and we will be putting up more details, but we do hope that we have more teacher learners and all of you join in for this session. It's on the 17th Thursday, and we are starting our session with Dr. Zirak Marker, and we're talking about student well-being in the higher classes and the higher, how can we promote mental well-being students in the classrooms. And we really hope that some of you can join us and be part of this discussion. It's unlike a different forum of a masterclass where we are having one guest speaker and others are going to be adding value to the forum and providing input. So we want this to be a continued learning community that we want to grow. So we do hope to see all of you again on 17th. We will normally send you all invitations and details about this initiative that we're starting the 17th of September as a Teachers' Day initiative from ABEA. Thank you so much.